It's been about 5 sleeps since the first dream I had about Gale. The dreams are almost always the same, but I don't know what to make of them. I'm always wandering through a shadowy landscape, searching for something as I walk endlessly. Saying it was shadowy might not do it justice, but the way it was set up is harder to explain. It was as if the place was a negative copy of the world, everything standing out in harsh white lines against the black backdrop. It's a lame explanation, but it's the best I can do. Anyway, I just kept walking forward, staggering a little because I was tired or hurt, when I suddenly came across someone in all that strangeness. They were floating a few feet off the ground, their mouth and eyes open as they groan in pain. When I looked at him, I could see it was Gale, and he looked like he was hoping for that great pain to end. He mouthed out words I couldn't make out before everything went white, and I woke up. Buddy would always come awake at the same time, almost like we'd been having the same dream, and look at me with confusion. I would try going back to sleep, but I just couldn't. I couldn't get that image out of my head. Felt like Gale was reaching out from wherever he was, and as I lay there thinking about it, I knew it had to mean something. Celine had no real advice to speak of, though. Like I said, no one's ever gone into the ceiling and come back out again, at least as far as I know. Maybe he's alive up there, maybe he's not. Either way, seems like a bad idea to go up there. I tried to put it out of my mind, but after being woken up the second night in a row by the exact same dream, I just couldn't shake the image. I hadn't had a lot of dreams since coming here, maybe a side effect of being stuck in this place, and these didn't feel like a couple of dreams I could remember having. They were extremely vivid and unlike anything I'd ever seen before, and I caught myself looking at the ceiling more than once that day. I wished I had some information about what was up there, but not even Gale had been in the ceiling before. Well, not until recently. But I wasn't the only one interested in the ceiling. Tired as I was, it was still hard not to notice Buddy was looking at the ceiling too. He had his head cocked to the side like he was listening to something, and I wondered what he was hearing over the drone of the fluorescence. Could he hear the miasma up there? Could he hear someone screaming quietly into the blackness of the ceiling? I didn't know, but I think that was the first time I thought about what could be up there, besides all that darkness. I thought about it a lot that day, and I must have carried it with me into sleep that night. I was in the negative place again, and I let my feet guide me to where Gale had been the night before. It wasn't hard now. I'd gone there a few times, after all, and I found him much sooner tonight than I had before. He was still contorted oddly, his body hovering above the floor, but he turned his head as I approached, an action that seemed to bring him great pain. He mouthed at me again in toneless horror. It was hard to tell what he was saying, but it looked like he wanted me to help him. Save me, or get me, was definitely the gist of it, though that was just a guess. His eyes turned to look at me as he mouthed, getting big as he spied something, and I turned just as a swirling mound of darkness roared loud enough to shake my soul. Buddy was barking when I came awake this time, and Celine was yelling for him to quiet down. It was hard to ignore the ceiling after that night, and as Celine and I traveled around getting supplies, I found myself looking at it in the different stores. Were they all like mine? Some of them didn't have ceilings like ours, but I was sure there existed a darkness in each of them. Who could say how you got into them, but they had to be there. It was a constant of each store, after all. The doors didn't open until they did. The ceiling was full of darkness. The food never spoiled. The bathroom always led forward. Constants. Maybe. Who could say? The third dream was much the same, though it was the first time I noticed that something was happening to Gale. I found him much sooner this time, my feet knowing the way. He was still floating there, in that constant state of torment, but pieces of him seemed to be floating up. It was easier to tell in the photonegative environment. They looked a little like snowflakes, and if he noticed, it was hard to tell. He seemed to be in a constant state of terror, though, so who's to say? As he looked at me, he again began to mouth something. It looked like he was asking me to come and get him, but the grimace in between words made it difficult to tell. Gale was clearly in distress, but whether it was the space or him, I couldn't hear anything he was saying. When I woke up the next day, I think I had already decided that I was going up there to get him. I knew it was a death wish, but I couldn't just sit here while whatever it was tormented him. Gale was important to me, and seeing him like that hurt me. It could be a way to lure me into the ceiling as well, but I didn't care. I was stuck here either way, so I might as well do something. Celine was instantly against it. You already went outside and came back. Are you in that big a hurry to tempt fate? But if I go up there and get him before it's all over, maybe he could help us find the end. There is no end, kid. It's an endless loop of Dollar General stores. We aren't meant to escape. We're just meant to keep moving, keep living until whatever controls this place gets tired of us. Buddy whined a little, looking at Celine as if pleading her not to yell. We were sitting around having dinner when I brought it up, and though the conversation had started out mild, it had become a little heated as it went on. She scratched Buddy behind the ears and seemed to find some of her lost cool. It's just a dream, kid. Don't think too much about it. Trust me, it'll just drive you crazy. I didn't push it, but I knew it was more than just a dream. Something about this place was special, and it seemed that I had some kind of affinity for it. It had opened the doors for me. It had spared me when I knew so little about it. It had allowed me to find Gale, something that didn't often seem to happen, and it felt like it had thrown me a bone when I met Celine, too. Now, it seemed to be pushing me towards the ceiling, and I couldn't ignore that. After 2 more nights, however, I was ready to go regardless. Each dream showed Gale in a worse state. He seemed to be turning into sand, his body dissolving a little at a time. The longer I came back into that void, the less I expected to find of him the next night. I can't claim that Gale and I were family or anything. I had honestly known him for a short time, but it was still painful to see him like that. Gale was the first real friend I'd had since coming here. He'd taught me how to travel with purpose, and we'd spent some time together. In contrast, Celine was methodical and not particularly interested in the secrets of this place. Not like Gale had been. She was content to survive, and that seemed to be what she intended to do with whatever immortality she had here. I, however, wanted a bit more than that. The last dream was the worst, and ultimately what drove me to action. When I found him, he was bobbing like a yo-yo, up and down and up and down. It looked like he was having a mid-air fit, and the lighted spaces were fading from him like snow. He wasn't mouthing anything when he looked at me this time. His mouth was open in a scream, and he was shaking as he loosed his silent fear and pain. It was terrible, like watching someone hang, and when I heard the tromp of heavy feet, I opened my eyes and sat up panting for breath. Buddy was awake too, but he just watched me as he lay shivering on the ground. He knew. I could tell that he knew, and I knew then what I had to do. Celine woke up to find me packing a backpack. "Where are you going?" she asked, though I think she already knew the answer. I'm heading into the ceiling. I wanted to be mad when she grabbed the backpack, but she was so gentle about it that it was hard to be angry. Let's talk about this before you... Celine, there's nothing to talk about. If there's a chance I can save Gale from the ceiling, then I'm going up there. But we don't even know what's up there. Besides the miasma, it could be a trap, kid. It could be death. No one comes back from the ceiling, she said, shaking her head as she tried to take the backpack from me. I held fast, not willing to give it up that easily. I've had dreams about it. It's possible to live up there, at least for a while. I want to bring him back. I want to have him here so he can help us find the end of all this. I've already told you, she said through gritted teeth. There is no end to this. This place, it just goes on and on and on. It won't matter if we have Gale or not. None of us are leaving. I tried to formulate something that wouldn't sound crazy, but all I had was a last-ditch effort. The hermit, Jasper, he wrote that he had seen it. Celine stiffened, the thought of the hermit filling her with a mixture of shame and apprehension. Jasper wasn't well. You saw that firsthand. If Jasper told you that he saw it, it was when he was still okay. Well, kind of okay. He came to a spot where he was afraid to go. A spot where the miasma were plentiful. And that's where he believed there might be some way to escape. She wanted to dispute me, but when I put the journal in her hands, she realized she could read it for herself. Hopefully, I won't be gone long. I want to tie a lead back to here so I can backtrack after I find him. Tie it to the ladder so I don't get lost while I'm up there. With any luck, I can come back with Gale and Rudy and anyone else I find up there. Celine seemed to think about it for a minute before sighing and shrugging. I guess there's no way I can really stop you. Not really, I said, heading for the ladder. All I ask is that you keep the hole open and don't unhook my rope. I can do that, she said. With you up there, the miasma probably won't. But she stopped when she noticed Buddy. Buddy had come trotting up with a harness and a leash in his mouth. He was looking at me as if to ask when we were heading out, and the look on Celine's face was heartbreaking. I patted Buddy's head, telling him that he had to stay here and keep Celine company, but he just kept jumping up and putting his paws on my chest, as if to say that he had to go with me. I turned to Celine, but she just shrugged and put the harness on, tears rolling down her face a little as she got him ready. You find Gale, Buddy. Find him and bring both of them back. And you, she said, looking at me with a look that brooked no argument, you bring my dog back, safe and sound. You hear me? I took a few minutes to write this out before I left. Buddy getting some last-minute pets before we head out. If I don't come back, then I guess the ceiling really was the final frontier. Hopefully I see you all a little bit later. You're still here. Thanks so much for joining us for tonight's spooky tale. If you'd like a little bit more spooky in your life, why not click on one of the videos that appears at the end of our story? Or maybe head on over to one of our playlists where you can get your fill of spooky content. If you like your spooky a little more tactile, I've got a new book that's come out. If you'd like your own copy, there's a link below in the description where you can get your own copy of my spooky book. If you like what you see here on the channel and think you might like to support in a more monetized way, then why not come over to Patreon or become a member on YouTube? Speaking of, let's go ahead and thank our members now. Thanks to Civ Garstad and Unicorn Hollow for being our spooky ghost contributors. Thanks to Janet, Lee Kendall, Saikat, Ronda J, Sue Casper, and Valinator for being our Spooky Skeleton tier contributors. And thanks to Hi Stacy, Winter, Xaronan, Stephanie Carrington, Tyler Parker, Cinnamon Fox, Sarah ASMR42, Grim Reaper, and TomBoiTopUwU for being our Ghostly Reader tier contributors. And a special thanks to Grim Reaper, who appears to have subscribed not just on YouTube, but also on my Patreon. Thanks, everyone. We just couldn't do the show without you, and your support is always appreciated. If you'd like to support the channel, then come on down to Patreon, or become a member on YouTube. Spooky Skeleton tier contributors, that's our $5 tier, get their spooky 12 hours early, at 8:30 a.m., as opposed to 8:30 p.m., my time, of course. And while Ghostly Reading is only a tier that's available on Patreon, you get a signed copy of my book anytime I write one on your doorstep in, hopefully, a timely manner. If you'd like a book, we have many on Amazon. I've got links below if you'd like to follow those. Should get you to my page so you can buy any one of my 8 books I believe we're up to now. I'm sure they'd look really nice on your shelf, and I'll sign them for you if you can find me out in the wild. And as always, thanks for stopping by. Dr. Plague, signing off. Have a wonderful evening.